So Limerick 27 points, Galway 24 points at Croke Park. Limerick have booked their place in the All-Ireland final after a 3-point win, and they will play Waterford in the All-Ireland final on the 13th of December. And yeah, what a win in the end for Limerick. I suppose it was a very tactical game in many ways. Probably wasn't the best game of hurling that we've ever seen. It definitely didn't have the same intensity or the same, last night felt like a real classic, game of the year contender. Whereas tonight, in my opinion, it was a little more tactical. I think there were a lot of nerves on show from both teams. I think there were times when Limerick probably could have put Galway to bed and they didn't. And I also think there were times where Galway could have really grabbed this game by the scruff of the neck and actually won the game, and in the end actually allowed Limerick coming back into it. But yeah, look, listen lads, of course I'm here as always with my reaction and my thoughts, and yeah, let's get straight into it. What's the story, everyone? It's Aaron here from GAA Fan TV. I hope you're all keeping wonderfully well. Limerick have beaten Galway by 3 points at Croke Park, and they are in the All-Ireland final alongside Waterford. It will be the first time that Limerick and Waterford have ever played each other in an All-Ireland final in the history of hurling at senior level. Anyway, they might have played each other at minor or under 20 for all I know, but certainly at senior level anyway, it's the first time that these two counties have met in an All-Ireland final. And yeah, look, listen, I suppose as always, first of all, what we'll do, of course, with these match reaction videos is we'll have a look at the teams who took to the field here, first of all. So we'll have a look at the winning team here, first of all, the Limerick team. So Nicky Quaid in goal, Sean Finn, Dan Morrissey and Barry Nash made up the full back line. The half back line was Dermot Burns, Declan Hannon and Kyle Hayes. The midfield was Dara O'Donovan and William O'Donoghue. And of course, the half forward line was Garrod Hegarty, Cian Lynch and Tom Morrissey. The full forward line, Aaron Gallan, Seamus Flanagan and Graham Mulcahy. Moving on to the Galway side then, so you had Aina Murphy in goal, Aidan Hart, Daithí Burke and Shane Cooney, Sean Loftus, Garrod McInerney, Joseph Cooney, Padraig Mannion and Johnny Cohen. The half forward line was Joe Canning, Cathal Mannion and David Burke, and the full forward line was Brian Concannon, Conor Cooney and Conor Whelan. And yeah, look, listen, first of all, special mention to Joe Canning. Hopefully he recovers after that nasty head injury he received on about the 61st minute or so. It took about 7-8 minutes before he went off the pitch. Looked like a very, just a bad coming together between him and I believe it was Joseph Cooney who came together. And yeah, nasty head injury, concussion as well. So nasty one there for Joe Canning. So I definitely wish him best recoveries in recovering from that injury, and hopefully next year we'll be able to see him back on the pitch again and back to his absolute best, because he was outstanding today. He was unbelievable today. 4 sideline cuts in this game from Joe Canning. I think they were saying in commentary on RTE that might be a record in terms of sideline cuts in a game. And wow, what a performance from him as well. So accurate from frees. He's just, he's a generational talent in hurling, in my opinion. He's something else. And he brings another dimension to this Galway team. And look, listen, there are other players on the Galway side that do cause a lot of problems, the likes of Cathal Mannion, Conor Whelan and David Burke on his day as well. Even Brian Concannon today had a very bright game in the first half, to be fair to him. But Joe Canning, for me, he's one of the best hurlers in the country. And just hopefully, anyway, it's nothing too serious with that injury. I suppose having a look at some of the scorers in general today, obviously we mentioned Joe Canning there, hit 12 points, all of them of course from place balls, but looking through some of the Limerick scorers, so interestingly enough, they had 9 different scorers on the day, which again for me shows that Limerick, I feel like with a lot of counties, and maybe you could even apply this to Galway to a certain extent, is that they are at times, they all have like one individual star player, all-star player, one of the best hurlers in the country. You look at Galway, obviously Joe Canning, Clare, Tony Kelly, Cork, Patrick Horgan. There's probably a few more there that I can't think of right now. For Limerick, in my opinion, although Aaron Gallan is one of the best hurlers in the country, and Cian Lynch, and you're looking at Kyle Hayes, but they just have so many. They have so many just really top class hurlers, and they're a very well-rounded team. They don't rely on individual talents. I think even if Aaron Gallan wasn't in this Limerick side, they probably still would have found a way, in my opinion, because they're that good, and they just seem to have extra options coming off the bench, like Seamus Flanagan, who started today, hit 2 points, 2 very well taken points, probably could have got a goal as well, had a goal chance. at one stage in the first half and probably should have dispatched that, and it was a good save by Aina Murphy, to be fair. Gerard Hegarty as well, he's just stepped it up a level this year. 4 points, outstanding, particularly in the first half, catching a lot of ball. Probably should have been sent off, in all honesty. We will get to that though. Keane Lynch as well, and even Peter Casey, coming off the bench. Peter Casey, of course, normally a starter in this Limerick team. He came off the bench and poked 2 points, very well taken as well. And look, for Galway, Conor Whelan hit 3. Very bright in the second half, especially late on. Galway needed to get their forwards more and more into the game because Limerick were winning far too much ball in that half back line. For Limerick, the likes of Sean Finn, for example, outstanding, and even Kyle Hayes and Dan Morrissey, Tom Morrissey, just doing a fantastic job in defence at times for Limerick. You're looking at Galway, and as I said before, Cathal Mannion at 1 point, his injury, massive without doubt. That definitely made a difference. And Joe Canning as well, he went off in the final going into injury time. And to be fair to Evan Nyland, who came on, hit 2 points and had the confidence to hit the free almost instantly when he came on and scored it beautifully. So look, listen, in the end for Limerick, it certainly wasn't their best performance, in my opinion, but I think, from a Limerick point of view, I've always felt that down the years, even when you look back at the 2018, there were times in the 2018 championship where they looked beaten, they looked down, they looked out, and they just managed to find the way and grind out the win. And it's almost very Kilkenny-like, very like what Kilkenny were like, in the early days of Brian Cody, kind of going through the 2000s. And I think a lot of people are drawing comparisons between John Kiley and Brian Cody. When you look at what Brian Cody done at underage level with Kilkenny as well, similar in many ways to what John Kiley done. So yeah, look, listen, and kind of getting into the game and some of the key talking points. So obviously Galway did start the brighter, in my opinion. They hit 2 early points, obviously, from Joe Canning from place balls. And Limerick were definitely quite slow getting out of traps. Gillan missed a free early on. They were struggling a little bit just in possession. Just a few overhit passes, a few unnecessary shots from, angles where they weren't going to score from. And they were struggling with the flow of the game in general. And, to be fair to Limerick, they were winning a lot of ball from their own puckouts and even from Aina Murphy's puckouts as well, but they just weren't using the ball well enough. They weren't moving quick enough. In the midfield, their short game at times was breaking down. And look, listen, they needed to get to the first water break to really, get into the game, get their act together, because certainly in that opening 15 minutes, they certainly weren't in the game. And, their first point came on the 9th minute. Tom Morrissey with Limerick's first point, and a really well taken point, and they actually had 3 wides up until that point as well, so they certainly hadn't started the way they would have wanted. And I did think at times in the first 15 minutes that defensively Limerick as well, just giving away a lot of silly frees. I felt like this was a common theme throughout the game. And I feel like with Galway, when they were driving at Limerick and when they were really running at Limerick were struggling a lot. And I don't think we've seen enough of that in the second half from Galway. And I think even in that kind of final stretch, in that final quarter of the game, when Galway reduced the 5-point lead and were level at 1 point, you could see that Galway were starting to drive more and more at Limerick when Conor Whelan was getting more in the game. And certainly Limerick were struggling. But look, listen, if any team can use the water break, as good as anything, Limerick are certainly one of them teams. And even John Kiley, we've seen him before with his defensive with his tactic boards, on the sideline, and certainly he didn't have it today, of course. Maybe he wasn't allowed into Croke Park with it, I don't know. But look, listen, Limerick came out, a completely different team after that water break. Gerard Hegarty grew more and more into the game. He was hitting some fantastic points from the left-hand side, breaking forward. And when Cathal Mannion went off injured, that was less worries then for Limerick, in terms of their defence. And they started winning a lot more ball. Kyle Hayes was getting more into it. Keane Lynch was getting more into it. And they were just starting to play very Limerick-like with the flicks and the passes. And they were hitting some fantastic points in particular. Obviously, there was a big, talking points, kind of going into the closing stages of the first half when smack of the hurl from Gerard Hegarty on Joe Canning just by the sideline. Seen a lot of different debate online. I even put out a poll on Instagram and it was very 50-50. 51% of people said it wasn't a red card, whereas 49% of people said it was. Personally, I think it was a red card. I think, look, listen, regardless of whether it was intentional or not, I do think, it was just a very heavy smack of the hurl on Joe Canning, especially in the lower back as well. When it wasn't in slow motion as well, it looked full force. And, in my opinion, when you're sending players off like Cathal Barrett last week for Tipperary, there needs to be a bit more consistency, because this challenge was far more worse, in my opinion. And I do think it should have been a red card. And I can understand from the referee's point of view why he didn't, because I don't think it was intentional. And if we go off the rule book and blah, 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 then fair enough. But personally, I do think it was a red card. I think it was just a bit over the top from Gearóid Hegarty in that situation. And you could see even when Joe Canning went down as well. But look, listen, I don't have an allegiance to either county, so it didn't really bother me too much in that kind of sense. But certainly from a Galway point of view, I can understand why a lot of their fans would be very frustrated tonight. And I do think the referee in general didn't have his best game tonight, in my opinion. There was times where he gave a couple of soft frees in Limerick's favour, but also in Galway's favour as well. And I don't think he was. I don't think he had his best game tonight, in my opinion. There were some talk that Aaron Gallan maybe should have received, a red card as well for his. He had a little kind of smack on Éanna Murphy. For me, that wasn't a red card. I think that was, there was nothing, really, there was no malice really in that, in my opinion. I actually think Éanna Murphy probably made a bigger deal out of it when he went down. And I suppose speaking of Éanna Murphy, he struggled a lot for Galway in this game from the puck outs. Limerick were overturning the ball consistently and probably actually could have made more damage out of it. There was even a chance in the first half at one stage where Éanna Murphy hit it out. It fell to one of the Limerick forwards, literally in the full forward line, and the passing just broke down, and Limerick could have had a clear goal chance and could have really, put their authority down on the game at that point. And it was 15-13 at half time for Limerick, and certainly in the second half, it was very tactical. A lot of teams, the ball was breaking down quite a lot at times in the midfield, and both teams weren't really grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck. And you're kind of thinking, which team really wants to win this? Which team is really going to go after this? And Limerick, to be fair, did look in control going into the final quarter. They were 21-16 up. They were picking up the pace at times when they needed to, with the likes of Hayes and Lynch getting more blocks in. Carl Hayes was fantastic as always for Limerick. What a player he is for this Limerick side. I mean, normally, of course, playing in the forward line, and now, of course, playing at wing back, and still offering that same threat going forward, and even defensively as well. He's been fantastic, catching a lot of high ball as well. But certainly after the, going into the final stages, just before Joe Canning's injury, as a matter of fact, just before his head injury, Galway were certainly getting more and more into it, without a doubt. I think the lead was at 2 points at that stage. Conor Whelan was starting to hit a couple of points. Brian Concannon, you were seeing, was causing a couple of problems. Even the likes of Adrian Toohey as well, who came off the bench, hit a great point as well. And even Evan Nyland, who came off the bench as well, like we were saying, he hit one from a free and he hit another fantastic point from play as well. And it looked like Galway were going to win the game, in all honesty, because they had the momentum. And, look, listen, normally when you have momentum, especially going into injury time, it looked like Galway were going to win it. And it didn't look like Limerick had an answer. But, a sign of a great team, in my opinion, is when you're just able to turn that screw and just get a little bit more and find a bit more intensity. And I think with Tom Morrissey in particular, they found that in the closing stages. I think 2 of his points were in the closing stages of the game, which is outstanding. And they just found, even with Adrian Breen as well coming off the bench, they just found an extra level in this Limerick side. And in the end, they were able to outclass this Galway side. Jeremy Burns hitting a late point as well, really well taken point as well. And they definitely stepped it up in the closing stages, there's no doubt about it. Well deserved of the victory, well deserved of the win. In my opinion, it certainly was close, and I think if Galway had played maybe just a little bit better on the day, maybe if Cathal Mannion didn't go away injured, they had a lot of maybe a lot of bad luck as well. The red card, as I said before, it's debatable in many ways. I'm going to say I think it was a red card, but certainly, Galway, they will feel a little bit hard done by today, in my opinion. But I think at the same time, Limerick, they did always look control of the game in many ways. Other than that final quarter, just going into injury time, it looked like Galway were going to overturn it. But similarly to what they done against Waterford, Limerick were able to just manage the game, control the game, and eventually had too much. And yeah, it sets up a very interesting All-Ireland final now in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm certainly very excited for that. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Man of the match, definitely Tom Morrissey. 6 points in the game, one from place ball, so 5 from play. And yeah, just his overall work rate was outstanding. and very well deserved. I think Gerard Hegarty probably, gets a mention as well. I know he probably should have been sent off, like I was saying. I think he should have been sent off, but I do think his actual performance in general was very impressive, and even the likes of Seamus Flanagan as well, and Aaron Glan, to be fair, done what he could for this Limerick side to keep them always in contention of winning this game. But anyway, lads, yeah, do let me know down in the comments below who your man of the match was. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. My name is Aaron. Do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.